Welcome to this week's series of the Madison Wine Exchange and our wonderful wine series that we have going right now with a winemaker from Napa Valley, none other than Mike Trujillo. Mike, thank you very much for coming today.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
Really appreciate it. Mike is from Seqouia Grove, and he's got some absolutely amazing wines, especially some killer 07s that we have to try. But first off, we have to talk about the rebirth that is Seqouia Grove. So Mike, why don't you just take us through a little history here?
You know, I'm happy to be here. It's good to be back in Connecticut, revisiting. I'm excited about what I'm doing at Seqouia Grove. It's a brand that's been around for many years, established back in the late 70s. Without a doubt, it was, a rock star of the 80s. It's been around. I came on board with this brand in 2002. My first vintage that I had full reins of was 2002. So, I think I'm going to be making a difference. I'm really excited to be here to show you. The ownership changed. It's now family owned by a company called the Koff family. It's three sisters. It's family owned.
I believe they're based out of our local
Yeah,
state here
they're
in
local
Connecticut.
area, New York, Connecticut, and they're very much connected with brands like Louis Jadot, Taittinger. They're very savvy in the wine business. So when the ownership changed, I was approached by the family to come on board and take over the winemaking. In that point of my career, I was about 20 years into my career, I had my own label, a small label called Carl Lawrence, which is kind of a culty wine of the time. And I still have it today. And they came to me and they said, listen, we want to bring you on board to help us turn Seqouia Grove around. I kind of hemmed and hawed a little bit. But anyway, I took the project on. And the reason is because I knew I had 1,000% backing from the new ownership. We had discussions. What would you do different? How much would it cost? How long would it take? Well, money, definitely. It always takes money to be playing in the wine industry. We all know that. But I needed time. And not that Seqouia Grove was a broken ship. I think that it just sort of froze in time a little bit, maybe in the late 90s. And phylloxera, everybody went through the phylloxera era of the 90s. So when I came on board, my immediate agenda was to get only the best grapes. I have great relationships with guys like Andy Beckstoffer, Gary Morzoli, Jan Krupp up in Sage. I have those relationships from previous. So I approached those guys and said, listen, I have a new project. I need the best grapes you have. They laughed at me and said, well, I'm not sure you're going to afford them.
Where's the money? Yeah.
Show me the money. And, with the backing of the family, I said, show me the good grapes. And that's exactly what happened. So the first vintage that is mine from start to finish is 2002. I needed about 4 or 5 vintages to turn this around. It takes time to reposition the vineyards. Where are you going to source Merlot? Where are you going to sourse Cab Franc? So on and so forth. I inherited a 22-acre estate property, about 20% of the portfolio. That's a little tough. So what I've done between 2002 and today, huge influx of cash for the facility.
Always helps.
Always helps. I kid around. It was like, cooking for an army on a Coleman stove, kind of. So, more fermenters, more, sorting equipment, more personnel, stuff like that. Completely re-established the grape sourcing, but at the early time of Seqouia Grove, I had to buy all those grapes. Today, we have acquired another 56 acres of Rutherford property. So today, I'm now 80% self-sufficient.
Now, I really want to point out that fact of purchasing an extra 56 acres. That this day and age, in Napa especially, you need that backing because getting an acre alone is going to set you back and put most people out of business just by signing the check. So to have 56 come at you when you already have an estate property going. Now, this also brings up the point here. I want to make sure we talk about this here. This is a illustrated map of Seqouia Grove and your vineyard selections that you have here. So, from what I understand now, you are working in properties in this area, right on the backside of areas like Plumpjack and Rudd.
Yeah.
Very close to Chateau Montelena.
Yeah.
And then you have a very fun little property that we were just talking about earlier.
We are in the heart of cab country. Rutherford, California. Oh my God, nickel and nickel. Cakebread's our next door neighbor. Stagland's across the highway. Camus is in our backyard. This is cab country. And the family knows that. And I, as a winemaker, truly know that. And God, better place to go and buy 56 acres.
If you're going to do it right.
And one reason that this is part of the Sequoia Grove portfolio today is, you know, this person didn't want to give up to the corporate side, didn't want this land to end up in a shareholder's bucket kind of thing. And it was a family property passed to a family identity, and I think that's really, really cool. So they actually kind of seeked us out. Our new property, what I'm talking about.
All right.
Let's say some wine. I talk better when we talk when we have wine.
Well, I'm a little parched myself. I think we should jump right into it.
All right. I'm going to start off. The whole winery is about 35,000 cases. I brought it down a little bit when I took over. You know, the winery was kind of bulging a little bit, but I wanted to bring the quantity down a little bit, get my hands around it. At the time, Sequoia Grove was making a Chardonnay and a couple different Cabernets into the market. Well, here we are, I'm showing the 09 Chardonnay and I'm showing the 07 Cabernets. I'm about 8-9 years since 02. These are my wines. I'm ready to put my name on these wines. These are Michael's wines. These are the different. They got a new package. That's part of that announcement. So let's talk about the Chardonnay. Even with the Chardonnay, I went and seeked out the best Chardonnay I could. I went to good growers like Andy Beckstoffer.
Now, where's the Chardonnay coming from before we get into that?
Canaris, all 100% Canaris, Napa Valley. I had one of my growers completely replant for me, putting the Dijon in the old Wente clone, and the keyword old Wente clone. And I had one of my growers, when I went up and asked him, I want some old Wente, he saw his head do a 360 on his shoulders. But I literally talked him into it. I'm paying him by the acre. It's 1.5 tons per acre. They're real scraggly little bunches, but they're just intense with rich, rich flavor. Makes about 15% of the blend. So you'll see that my wine, I don't believe in stomping on. I don't do secondary fermentation. I don't do malolactic. I believe that California Sunshine does a very good job of that for me. And I want my wines to be very varietally expressive. I want you to taste Chardonnay, number one. And then Chardonnay to me is apples and pears and just, really fragrant. And I want that crisp, natural acidity of apples and pear to come and support the wine. So when you taste this wine, you can see it's very, very refreshing. It's not heavy. It's not overdone.
This nose
no mallow at all.
No mallow, zero malolactic. It is barrel fermented, 100% French oak.
Are we talking new oak or?
Only about a third of that is new. Only about 33% of that is new. It sits on the sediment or the spent leaves for about 10 months. And I love it. It's rich.
This is just kind of a plethora of these great stone fruits coming through on the nose. You get a lot going on here, but it's extremely dynamic, and it's a wine that just kind of screams through. And you do get a little bit of that barrel aspect coming through, but it's not. A lot of these California Chards that are coming out. I mean, no disrespect at all, but a lot of these that are coming out are these huge oaky butterbomb things that, it's nice to see something that's more to the grape.
This has been my style as a winemaker my entire career. It's probably something that I gathered from, Andrei Chelichev, the years that I've worked with Jim Allen. I mean, it's just a style that I like. I like to kid around. It's becoming fashionable today. But you can see this wine, it's not aggressive, it's very delicate, and the finish just lingers and lingers and lingers and lingers.
Well, I think we should start to get ourselves in a little trouble and see what they taste like.
Tastes like Chardonnay.
That is an absolutely beautiful wine. There's no over intensity. It's just pure fruit. That mouth-watering acidity is really coming up there.
Well,
really hitting you. But what I love here, nice balance all the way down.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful wine.
Key point. I'm also a winemaker that doesn't believe in those sort of higher alcohol things. So here we're running about 14.2, 14.3 alcohol. I don't want that to be so hot either.
Yeah, no, it's very smooth. I mean, especially with some of these people that are coming out now with 16ers and 17%ers.
But then on your finish, you get that nuttiness from the barrel. Like
from the barrel, you do get that in the end, but from start to finish, this thing is just very well balanced.
Oh, creamy.
A little bit of creaminess, but it's definitely not overpowering.
Oh, I'm excited about it.
I'm having a good time. I'm not gonna lie to you.
So am I.
Well, I think we should maybe check out and see what some of the cab is doing because.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to what we call our Napa cab. This one here, for people that may be familiar with the old Napa cab, I used to have a dark green label on my Napa cab. That was a representation of a lot of the grapes that I used to purchase.
Okay.
Remember, now our direction for Sequoia Grove is going into independence. So the future, we're going to be more and more state vineyard. So the old idea was a wine that was made from purchased grapes, and then I used to have a Rutherford Reserve with a dark red and maroon label on it. That was a representation of a wine made from our estate property there at Sequoia Grove. I did that all the way up until 2006. But with the vision of the new property, the vision of the bar, the quality keep notching up, it was time for me to set the altitude and set the level of quality and call this wine mine. So I decided to take that Rutherford Reserve, that 2,200 cases of luscious Cabernet, and fold it down into the Napa, just fold it in, give myself one more boost of quality on this main workhorse wine, set the altitude, and that's going to be my workhorse wine.
I love it. Let's see what it's all about here. I'm gonna set us up with a new glass.
Now with the 07 here, how much of this is being purchased and how much is actually estate grown?
It's going to be a transition. When I eventually get rolling full steam, I'm going to be about 85% self-sufficient, 15% buy. I have some treasure vineyards that I never want to let loose of. When you zoomed in on that map, you saw some vineyards like Lamoureux, Healy. I love buying these high altitude blending grapes off the Stagecoach Vineyard. Beckstoffer, I have good relationships with Beckstoffer. I'm always going to be buying a little bit here and there. So I'm a believer that the more dimension, the more layers you bring to the attributes of the wine, it's going to be a bigger, richer wine.
Now there was one property we were talking about before that you now have that has kind of lingered in the back of my mind here, and I'm really curious to see if these 07s we're going to jump into really has the dynamic of what these are all about, and that is that parcel of property now where you're right on the backside of Spotswood.
Oh yeah, that's a fun vineyard. The vineyard is a vineyard called Healy. I met this gentleman and I fell in love with this vineyard. The management is handled by a local producer or a local management company there that's a good friend of mine. And I just fell in love with this vineyard. And what I really fell in love with is the attributes of the grape. As I walked through the vineyard, I was getting this really sort of cocoa-y component to this grape. I had to have them. I got on the phone, and at that time, that was pre-recession, so I had some pretty big-handed winemakers in there trying to elbow me out, and I ended up controlling the entire vineyard. And
Not an easy feat.
And it's planted, ironically, with a secret clone. I don't know if I should divulge that, but it has a very, very special clone in it that I'm glad I have the vineyard.
Well, I think we should see what this 007 clone is all about.
So here, I want you to, the number one thing we have to remember about 07 is I'm going to be blending in that reserve. So I'm setting the bar up high. I really want my wines, just like the Chardonnay, to be varietally expressive. So this is mainly Rutherford-based wines, Beckstoffer, my vineyards. I have Morzoli vineyard as part of the Rutherford bench, Garvey family. So most of this is Rutherford. So when you smell it, you get that sort of cherry, a little bit of earth component to this wine.
Definitely get a lot of dark cherry, a little bit of that
Perfect.
cocoa you were talking about.
Perfect. I want to just put a little notch in here. I actually aged this wine in American oak, so a little bit of that
Really?
sort of cedar, that sweet vanilla and cedar is going to be that American oak attribute. But it's only about a 14%, 40%
40% American?
new oak.
Okay.
New. I don't want to overdo the new.
Now, what was the rationale for going American versus French?
I kind of inherited the concept. When I inherited the wines, it was already being made in American oak, so it had a signature already. This isn't an expensive bottle of wine. I mean, we'll talk about that here at the end. French barrels are about 3 times as much as American oak. So I think, as a winemaker, American oak has come a long way. We're making it traditional, the wood's being seasoned, so I have nothing negative to say about American oak. Just got to kind of let up on the gas pedal a little bit when you're
Don't want
using
to be
it.
chewing on it. Yeah.
Exactly. So by blending in the reserve into the Napa cab, it used to be a high percentage Cabernet, 95, 96%. By bringing in the Bordeaux blend, I lowered the percentage of Cabernet down to about 86%. Sprinkle in a little bit of the other four Bordeaux varietals, Merlot, Franc, Petit Verdot, Malbec. But I'm not calling it Bordeaux blend. I'm calling it Napa Cab. So I hope that you get the sort of the same signature of varietal expression and not too heavy on the other attributes.
Well, I'm loving how this nose keeps opening. I mean, the more air I give it, the more it's just really opening up. And I mean,
pretty dark, huh?
yeah, and, well,
Yeah.
you know,
Some,
07 was this vintage where Bacchus just smiled on Napa,
Oh, yeah,
and
Mother Nature was awesome.
we really lucked out there.
I don't know, does that 08 and you know, 08 is, we've been pretty blessed this decade. Actually.
Oh yeah, no, we've been lucking out. So let's see what the 07's all about.
Just bursting with varietal.
Very dark, very balanced. What I love though is the very supple, elegant tannic structure.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not over the top. It's not that huge, intense, crazy fruit bomb that's trying to hide other stuff. This is a brilliantly made cap.
Seamless.
It's just
And
wonderful.
I definitely think that bringing in those Bordeaux varietals a little bit more, it definitely lingers, gets a nice little elegant finish to it.
Well, I love making wine in the fermenter. I mean, first of all, you got to have the best grapes to make good wine. But then the next part where the winemaker comes in is in the fermenter. That's where you control your, you know, your tannins and your structure of your wine. So I really go after those really fine tannins. I do a fair amount of extended maceration on some of these, and then blending.
It's just a wonderful job, and I'm loving the new packaging. But honestly, the juice is what's making it for me.
Yeah, I'm excited about this. This is and this is the new bar set for Seqouia.
Oh yeah.
So the 08, the 09, I guarantee will be no less than this one.
It's nice to know that we've got another couple of years with just some beautiful wine coming from you.
Good, like that.
Now, since we're talking about beautiful wine, there's something that's been catching my eye in the dead center here. This Goliath here of wine that no one knows about.
Wow, this is a new one. This is a new one for me. You hear all the excitement that I have that, you know, turning the ship around, you know, getting everything lined up to make great wine. Well, us winemakers are never satisfied. We always want to push to the limit. I've always had great respect for many labels that have been birthed in the past. If you look at some of the history of winemakers, you know, Walter Schroep, who created Insignia back in the 70s, and there's been a lot of these really key wines. The winemakers really want to come out and express. They want to express their knowledge and their wisdom of not only vineyards, but of Mother Nature. So that's what I want to do as a winemaker, and my team of winemakers that I have at Seqouia, Molly and Steve, our vineyard guy, is to take the best of the best, whether it be vineyards or what our fermenters end up being, or fermentations or whatever, and then just gradually over 2 years of time partner them from the herd and ending up with a very, very small production of the best. 350 cases, 9-liter cases is what I produced of this wine. To give you a scope of that, I produced about 2,500 barrels of red wine. This is at the top 13.
Wow.
So to give you an idea how much we're dissecting that down. And I use this when I'm out in the street selling it. Artist Series wines, we've all heard of that. You know, the pretty different package on the outside. Well, this is Molly and myself and my winemaking team. This is the Artist Series that we're putting under the glass. So every year will have a little difference. There's no boundaries to this wine in labeling. You see that I don't have appellation. I don't have varietal. I want this wine to just be known as Cambium. All right, what is Cambium? I needed a name that would connect me to the Sequoia Grove redwoods. Something that tied this to Sequoia Grove. Tried everything you could think of. We discovered Cambium, and Cambium is the layer that sits right underneath the bark of a redwood tree that brings all the life up the tree. From the soil, the nutrients and the life up the tree. Any bark plant has it, including grapevines. They have the Cambium layer in it. Perfect fit. Perfect fits the trees, fits the grapes, but more importantly, it fits life. And it fits the mechanism of the record of that vintage. So with that said, This will tip one way to the other. Maybe one year a little more Franc, maybe one year a little bit more Merlot, so on and so forth. But it will always be consistent to the consumer. It'll be rich, velvety, silky, multi-dimension Cabernet. We got to taste it.
Yeah.
I love it. I'm pumped. My palate's kind of jumping out of my face right now. I'm very excited here.
So what I want this wine to come across as is I'm not looking for this wine to be big and take it, big in tannin, big in alcohol, and definitely not big in oak. You can tell I'm not a heavy oak guy. I want it to be big by complexity. Layers and layers and layers of stuff going on. And you're going to really feel that in the mouth. You're going to really feel that in the texture of the wine. It's a velvet gloved big wine. So this blend runs about 74% Cabernet Sauvignon. A majority of that cab comes from Rutherford. So you do get a little bit of that earthy cherry notes out of it. Cab Franc, about 18%, and the remainder is Merlot.
I love a hefty amount of Cab Franc.
Oh, I do, yeah.
What I love on this thing, though, is you get a lot of that kind of darker berry note coming through, and just this underpinning of like an herb quality that's
and almost a dark mocha.
Yeah,
like a mocha.
just beautiful.
Almost violets, a little bit of just. It's no aggressiveness. It just sort of dances.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. You get that touch of that blueberry note from the Cab Franc towards the end, but the length on this thing is still going, and the tannic structure, again, super smooth, very velvety, lets you know it's there, but it doesn't beat you up. Wow.
In the finish too, they're very nice.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm liking it. I purposely hold this bottle back at the winery for 2 years post-bottling. Because when it comes out, it's very clumsy in adolescence because it's kind of big. So I'm going to, at the winery, get in a position to hold it for 2 years before I pass it on to you guys and the consumers and wine club, whatever.
So out of the winery, when does this officially release?
I'm going to do a pre-sale beginning June 1. That's what we're doing today. I'm on the road, going around the country. The winery will officially release it August 1. I may go September 1. I got to see how I go. I'm going to be sold out by then, I think. I hope.
Well, 350 cases out.
Yeah.
And this stuff is.
I know we'll be sold out
fantastic.
by then.
Yeah.
Good. I love that. I love that. But the idea is, at the winery, I'm going to say August 1st. Is going to be the official release date. Between June 1 and August 1st, we're doing the sort of pre-sale campaign with you guys now.
You know what I absolutely love? I love the fact that this isn't being submitted to a reviewer at the moment. I love the fact of that because how often can someone try a wine, understand its greatness, figure out where it's going to be at a wonderful price point, and then 2, 3, 4 years down the road, when this thing becomes the star, when this becomes the next insignia, when this becomes this next great cult wine that everyone has to have in their cellar, they know they jumped in on the first go.
Yeah.
And they can see how it goes.
Yeah.
That's what I love about this, and I know this is going to do phenomenally well. And especially here, I know it's going to fly out. And this wine is something that, honestly, I'd love to come back to it tomorrow too and see how it's still doing.
That's the beauty of this wine. That's the true beauty of this wine, is it's still cocooned, you might say. I mean, it's drinking great now. It's not aggressive. It's silky. You could easily decant this at home and easily have a wonderful.
We should point out that this is a popped bottle straight into glass.
Yeah.
This is no decanting, nothing of that
This
nature.
is just going to be like a flower over the next 15 years, without a doubt.
So, Mike, I want to thank you very much for coming by. I raise a glass.
Cheers. Thank you for having me, you guys. Cheers.
Thank you. Make sure you do swing on by. Check out the Sequoia Grove products, especially the Cambium when it finally comes out. Don't miss out on it because I guarantee it will not be here long. Mike, thank you very much
My
again.
pleasure. Thanks for
Appreciate it.
having me.
Thanks a lot, Mike.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.